About 15 years ago, before I was the pastor here at our church, I was guest teaching here one Sunday morning. I don't remember what I said, the sermon topic, it's not really important. This isn't a story about me, it's a story about the church. Not our church, but the church. Years later, after I had become pastor here, I got to know someone who was a member here at the time. He and his family have since moved to another city. But we were having lunch one day, and he told me that the day God turned his life around was that Sunday morning that I happened to be guest teaching here. He said his marriage was imploding. He was at the end of his rope. He felt like his life, was just at a dead end. He didn't know what to do. And he got up that Sunday morning, and for reasons he couldn't explain, because he wasn't a spiritual person, he wasn't a church-going person, he just had this sense that he should go to church. And so he went to the closest church he could find that happened to be ours. He showed up that Sunday, he sat, he listened, and God changed his life. Now here's the thing, that was only possible. He was only able to imagine a place called a church that he might go to, let alone being actually able to physically go there, because there was a church here. He was only able to go to a church because there was a church here to go to. And the reason, in large part, that the church was here was because a group of people made sure that it was. People he didn't know, with whom he had no previous relationship, showed up here week after week after week, and they served each other, and they gave of their financial resources to make sure that there would be a church here when a hurting, broken person needed it. And the same was true for me. The church was here when I was hurting and broken, and for many of you watching this, I imagine the same is true for you, that the church was there for you when you were hurting and broken. The question, of course, is will the church be here for the next hurting and broken person, or for the next hurting and broken generation of people? And that, of course, in many ways is up to us. Our church, we just finished this teaching series, kind of casting vision for the next season of our shared life together. We're starting to think about our church as a vocational school where our core focus is to learn love. And we think God is love. And so Christian spirituality ought to be measured by us becoming perfect in love. If the people at our church missed all the details, I hope the message that came through loud and clear was there are people here dreaming about and thinking about and planning for the next season of our shared life together. Not for us, but for other people. And I know that to be true at every church in the area. That at every single church, I know there are people who are dreaming about and thinking about and planning for the next season of your life together. Not just for you, but for other people. If you're watching this, my question is that how you think about your relationship to the church? Is that how you think about your relationship to the church? Do you think about your relationship to the church as like a consumer, that you leverage the church for your own benefit whenever you kind of feel like it? Or do you think about your relationship to the church more like a contributor, as someone who has to participate in this thing we call the church because there are hurting, broken people in the world who need it? If that's not how you think about it, I'm encouraging you, inviting you, calling you to start thinking about it that way. Now, I know a message like this is super dangerous. I don't know all of you. I don't know all of your stories. And so, trying to do something like this isn't going to account for every single person, right? So let me be clear. There are some of you who pre-COVID, you were just kind of marginally engaged with church, which is to say you went every once in a while when you got up and felt like it. And COVID probably just accelerated that and made that more pronounced. And so church now it isn't a thing for you. And while that is sad, and I wish that were not the case, this message really isn't for you. I know many of you out there are still concerned about COVID and that sort of thing. This message really isn't for you either. This message is for people who consider themselves committed Christian people, but for whatever the reasons, and they may be reasons you haven't even reflected on, your engagement or your involvement with church has just waned over the last year and a half or 2 years. You're not going, you're not involved, you're not plugged in. I'm talking to you, right? If the church is going to be here for the next hurting, broken person, for the next hurting, broken generation, you have to be there. There's no there if you're not there. And so I'm inviting you to think less like a consumer and more like a contributor. If you consider yourself a committed Christian person and there is some place that you call your church, I'm inviting you to do 3 basic things, really basic things, in order to help ensure that the church is here. And it's the kind of place, the kind of vibrant place, where a person like the guy in my story can find healing and can find life. The first is show up. Just show up. Be there. If you're not there, there's no there for other people to come to, right? It's become kind of common for people to sort of get up and just think, well, I'll go to church if nothing else is going on. I'm encouraging you to think of the opposite, that make being engaged with your church the priority when your church gathers, and everything else has got to make a case for why you should go do that otherwise, right? You may not always feel like being at church is necessary or important for you, but that's how a consumer would think. A contributor would think, you know what? It's important for somebody. It's important for somebody that I be there. And so I'm going to be there. So show up. 2, don't just show up, serve, right? But you think about the church like your home. If someone were coming into your home for the first time, what kind of experience would you want them to have? And what would you do to make sure that that happened? Think of the church the same way. What kind of experience do you want a hurting, broken person to have when they walk into your church? And what are you actively doing to help make it that kind of an environment? Again, it's not just our responsibility that the church is here, but that it's the kind of place where people who are hurting and broken can find healing and can find life. So serve each other. And then, of course, the last is to give financially. Like any church, we have a mechanism here where people can give to our church, and we think of it as a spiritual practice where you're growing in generosity. And so occasionally I'll quip that, giving isn't about keeping the lights on, but in some ways giving is about keeping the lights on. There are institutions in this world that function to hold the fabric of society together, and the church is one of them, right? The church is here. The church was here for me. It was here for you. It was here for the person in my story, because people gave of their financial resources. They took financial ownership of that place and made sure that it would be here. I'm encouraging you to do the same. If you're not currently giving to your church, give to your church. It's important. It's important that your church is here for people. And I don't mean give haphazardly. I don't mean give every once in a while when you decide to show up. I mean organize your financial life around giving to your church and to any other organization that you think is super important for the health of our communities. Right? Give consistently. Make it a priority in your life. It's important. Show up, serve, give. These are 3 basic practices that any committed Christian ought to be doing weekly to make sure that their church is here and that it's the kind of life-giving, vibrant place that hurting, broken people can find healing and can find life. This is the Thanksgiving season. You might be watching this on a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday, right? We're so trained to think like consumers in our culture, and we tend to think about church like that, right? Like church is here to sort of dispense religious services for you to consume, and if you decide you don't want to consume them, then you don't go. The church is supposed to be a body of people who are thinking about how to impact the world in which they live, thinking like contributors. So instead of focusing so much on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday ought to be the place where we go, this is our day. This is the day where we think about how we contribute, how we help other people. I'm thankful for the church. I'm thankful for the people who showed up and who served and who gave to this place so that it was here for me when I was hurting and broken. And I'm thankful for you. If you are a committed Christian person, I'm thankful that you're going to take the steps to show up, to give, to serve, right? To make sure that your church is here and that it is the kind of place where hurting and broken people can find healing and can find life.